Melancholy by Emil Cioran. Every state of the soul adopts its own external form or transforms the soul according to its nature. In all great and profound states, there is a close correspondence between the subjective and the objective level. Overflowing enthusiasm is inconceivable in a flat and closed space. Men's eyes see outwardly that which troubles them internally. Ecstasy is never a purely internal consummation. It externalizes a luminous inner intoxication. It would suffice simply to look at the face of an ecstatic to grasp fully all the elements of his inner tension. Why does melancholy require exterior infinity? Because it is boundless and void expansion. One can cross boundaries either positively or negatively. Exuberance, enthusiasm, fury are positive states of overflowing intensity which break restrictive barriers and go beyond normal states. They spring from an excess of life, vitality, and organic expansion. In such positive states, life goes beyond its normal boundaries, not to negate itself, but to liberate its smoldering energies, which would otherwise unleash a violent conflagration. Crossing boundaries has a totally different meaning for negative spiritual states, since it does not happen from an overflow of plenitude, but from quite the contrary. A void originates in the depths of being, spreading progressively, like a cancer. The sensation of expansion towards nothingness present in melancholy has its roots in a weariness characteristic of all negative states. This weariness separates man from the world. Life's intense rhythm, its organic inner pulse, weakens. Weariness is the first organic detriment of knowledge. Because it creates the necessary conditions for man's differentiation from the world, weariness leads one to the perspective which places the world in front of man. Weariness also takes one below life's normal level, allowing only a vague premonition of vital signs. Melancholy therefore springs from a region where life is uncertain and problematic. Its origin explains its fertility for knowledge and its sterility for life. Whereas in ordinary states of mind, one is in close contact with life's individual aspects, in melancholy, being separated from them produces a vague feeling of the world. Solitary experience and a strange vision melt the substantial forms of the world. They take on an immaterial and transparent garb. Progressive detachment from all that is particular and concrete raises one to a vision which gains in size what it loses in substance. No melancholy state can exist without this ascent, this flight towards the heights, this elevation above the world. Neither pride nor scorn, despair, nor any impulse towards infinite negativity, but long meditation, vague dreaminess born of weariness, lead to this kind of elevation. Man grows wings in melancholy, not in order to enjoy the world, but in order to be alone. What is the meaning of loneliness and melancholy? Isn't it related to the feeling of interior and exterior infinity? The melancholy look is expressionless, without perspective. The interior infinitude and vagueness of melancholy, not to be confused with the fecund infinity of love, demands a space whose borders are ungraspable. Melancholy is without clear or precise intentions, whereas ordinary experience requires concrete objects and forms. Melancholy detachment removes man from his natural surroundings. His outlook on infinity shows him to be lonely and forsaken. The sharper our consciousness of the world's infinity, the more accurate our awareness of our own finitude. In some states, this awareness is painfully depressing, but in melancholy, it is less tormenting, and sometimes even rather voluptuous. The disparity between the world's infinity and man's finitude is a serious cause for despair. But when one looks at this disparity in states of melancholy, it ceases to be painful, and the world appears endowed with a strange, sickly beauty. Real solitude implies a painful intermission in man's life, a lonely struggle with the angel of death. To live in solitude means to relinquish all expectations about life. The only surprise in solitude is death. The great solitaries retreated from the world not to prepare themselves for life, but rather to await with resignation its end. No messages about life ever issue forth from deserts and caves. Haven't we prescribed all religions that began in the desert? All illuminations and dreams of the great solitaries reveal an apocalyptic vision of downfall and the end rather than a crown of lights and triumph. The solitude of the melancholic man is less profound. It even has sometimes an aesthetic character. Don't we talk of sweet melancholy or of voluptuous melancholy? Melancholy is an aesthetic mood because of its very passivity. The aesthetic attitude towards life is characterized by contemplative passivity, randomly selecting everything that suits its subjectivity. The world is a stage, and man, the spectator, passively watches it. The conception of life as spectacle eliminates its tragic element, as well as those antinomies which drag you like a whirlwind into the painful drama of the world. The aesthetic experience, where each moment is a matter of impressions, can heartily surmise the great tensions inherent in the experience of the tragic, where each moment is a matter of destiny. Dreaminess, central to all aesthetic states, is absent from tragedy. Passivity, dreaminess, and voluptuous enchantment form the aesthetic elements of melancholy. Yet, due to its multifarious forms, it is not purely aesthetic. Black melancholy is also fairly frequent. But first, what is sweet melancholy? On summer afternoons, haven't you experienced that sensation of strange pleasure when you abandon yourself to the senses without any special thought, and when intimations of serene eternity bring an unusual peace to your soul? It is as if all worldly worries and all spiritual doubts grow dumb in front of a display of overwhelming beauty whose seductions render all questions superfluous. Beyond turmoil and effervescence, a quiet existence enjoys the surrounding splendor with discreet voluptuousness. Calm, the absence of intensity of any kind, is essential to melancholy. Regret, also inherent in melancholy, expands its lack of intensity. But though regret may be persistent, it is never so intense as to cause deep suffering. Regret expresses effectively a profound phenomenon, the advance through life into death. It shows us how much has died in us. I regret something which died in me and from me. I bring back to life only the ghost of past experiences. Regret reveals the demonic significance of time. While bringing about growth, it implicitly triggers death. Regret makes man melancholy without paralyzing or cutting short his aspirations, because in regret, the awareness of the irredeemable focuses on the past, and the future is still left somewhat open. Melancholy is not a state of concentrated, closed seriousness brought forth by an organic affliction, because it lacks the terrible sense of irrevocability so characteristic of states of genuine sadness. Even black melancholy is only a temporary mood, not a constitutional feature. Its dreamy character never completely absent, black melancholy can never be a true illness. Sweet and voluptuous melancholy, as well as black melancholy, exhibit similar traits: interior void, exterior infinity, vagueness of sensations, dreaminess, sublimation. Their differentiation is apparent only from the point of view of affective tonalities. It may be that the multipolarity of melancholy derives more from the structure of subjectivity than from its own nature. Not particularly intense, it fluctuates more than other states. Endowed with more poetic than active virtues, it possesses a certain subdued gracefulness totally absent from tragic and intense sadness. The same gracefulness marks melancholy landscapes. The wide perspective of Dutch or Renaissance landscape, with its eternity of light and shadows, its undulating veils symbolizing infinity, its transfiguring rays of light, which spiritualize the material world, and the hopes and regrets of men who smile wisely. The whole perspective breathes an easy melancholy grace. In such a landscape, man seems to say regretfully and resignedly, "What can we do? It's all we have." At the end of all melancholy, there is a chance of consolation or resignation. Its aesthetic aspect holds possibilities for future harmony which are absent from profound organic sadness. The latter ends in the irrevocable, the former in graceful dream.